Today we're looking at WinWing's tribute to the F-15 throttle design, the F-15E and EX handles. Featuring full metal body made of high pressure, cast aluminium, coated in electrostatic scratch resistant paint and sized 1-to-1 with the real grip design, hiding two TwinShock Vibration feedback motors inside. As always, full disclosure, WinWing sent me the units for free for the purposes of review. Taking advantage of their modular Orion design, it takes about 5 minutes to swap out the grips, followed with a quick update of the base firmware, requiring removal of most USB devices and being plugged directly into your motherboard. Otherwise, firmware updates can crash on you, which is not ideal. All set, WinWing offer both E and EX grips. The left is common to both options, so we'll start there. Armed with precise Hall effect axes for the antenna, push button converted to a 5-way hat, and 2 inline buttons. Lastly, a side-mounted countermeasure switch, which is also momentary. Ergonomically, that 5-way hat button is an issue. You can't easily grip it from the top, which forces you to press it from the side for directions. This is the cost of adding extra functionality without changing the form, but it's still easy to press down. The antenna wheel can also be a little difficult to operate precisely with your pinky, personally preferring to move one finger in instead. We can thank McDonnell Douglas for this slightly awkward layout. The axis feels smooth, tight and satisfyingly clicks into the centre. The antenna elevation wheel, however, diverges from reality. It's an absolute axis, and so it doesn't return to centre unlike the real deal. So you're going to have to manually return it whilst flying the F-15 if you bind it 1-to-1. This is a slight disappointment, but I do believe it was done to maximise compatibility in combination with the EX grip we'll see later. I rather wish the E-grip had come with a matched return to centre model instead for complete replica accuracy, but it's a good bit of hardware either way. All that said, a reasonable start with one major caveat. The left-hand grip on an Orion 1, Gemini or Super Taurus throttle base loses both the hat directions and the inline buttons. Vibration motor support is also lost in that particular grip. This owes to limitations in the older designs, whilst the Orion 2 is upgraded with greater bandwidth. That said, I ran into issues getting my antenna to function at all. First, you cannot make use of any of the base's encoder knobs in axis mode whilst using the antenna elevation control. And secondarily, unless you manually calibrate that new axis, you'll find the control shows, but it won't respond. So you're going to have to make sure you update your firmware in SIMAP Pro and do the manual calibration of the RZ axes after assembly. Technicalities over, let's roll on over to the right hand side where we have the E model grip first. This is the replica design, keeping true to life with only one additional button, the coolie hat depress. You have radio, speed brake, reject and weapon select, all moderate switches, having a solid click to them, lining up perfectly with 1-to-1 for the F-15E. Similarly designed, it also works well with the A10C Warthog, although lacking a 5-way radio hat. Up front there's the coolie hat and slew joystick, all easy to reach and find at your fingertips. These switches in particular have a nice heavier feeling than previous WinWing offerings, being quite satisfying to press. The EX, on the other hand, is what happens when you have an insatiable need for more, not replicating any real aircraft, but rather WinWing's own expansion on the Strike Eagle throttle, having 3 5-way hats and an inline push button, but still retaining the radio and weapon selector. And that's just the side. Up front we have the same cursor slew and 5-way hat. Additionally, we have a Hornet-style spring-loaded Hall effect relative antenna elevation axes, just like a dedicated Hornet grip design. This wheel is a little rough to the touch, and whilst gripping you well, it'll give a little discomfort over prolonged use if you're working the radar hard. Finally, with a mini 5-position button wheel, this little guy appears to be a Hall effect sensor, but without the axes, owing to Windows hardware address limitations, only giving one of 5 button positions based on rotation instead. Ergonomically, the whole set is actually quite reasonable, contrary to appearances. The mini coolie hat works well under your thumb knuckle. The lower hat is easy with a ridged design. However, the TMS style hat above can be slippery to press up or down. I'd have liked to have seen another ridged design up here to help you grip it. Up front you're going to have to slide your hand left or right, as it will be tricky to keep fingers on everything, being designed to offer flexible choices instead. to give both relative and absolute radar controls, which is rather unique in that respect, letting it handle any kind of radar system. I should note there is a little panel wobble on my unit around the Hornet-style elevation axes, a minor build quality issue, but it shouldn't really impact usability at all. My main gripe with the EX is the lack of a dedicated air brake switch. Without one, you are going to have to hold down a hat for the duration of extension or retraction. Or you're going to have to repurpose a switch like the China Hat weapon select, which is less than ideal. Personally, I find it's a missing major quality of life feature. So you make some sacrifices for a significant horde of buttons, switches and axes. In fact, I believe combined with the Orion 2 base, this makes for the most controls on a single throttle unit on the market right now. And software side, this shows WinWing are pushing up against the technical limits of DirectX controller addresses for axes. The axes limit means you won't be able to utilise the encoder axes knobs in axes mode on your base, for example, nor the little thumb axes on the EX grip, operating as mentioned as a button array, but you can still use all the virtual buttons on the axes, and of course they've got the 4x32 button mode for further compatibility with old titles. Other standard WinWing features like the neutral position, control inputs for ease of binding, and afterburner positions with configurable detent and light sync of course still work just fine. Alright, so what about that TwinShock feedback vibration feature then? Well, we're starting off with a caution. Make sure your base has sufficient power, ideally with an externally powered USB hub. Otherwise the motors may overdraw and drop connection with your PC when the motors start. That resolved, you're going to need to configure WinWing's SimApp Pro software to load a profile, either WinWing's default or the advanced to community made. As of recording, only the F-16 joystick also features a vibration feature, so I'm hoping we'll see this adopted by more stick handles for a complete HOTAS. The motors in each handle provide a soft rumble in response to in-game events such as pulling angle of attack, weapons release, landing gear transition, or touching down. And of course, crashing. Whilst providing a proportional response to the air brake's extension. Effects themselves are simple with some limited modulation, but they're often just on or off at a set speed, rather like a gamepad's rumble pack. They come pre-configured with basic profiles for most DCS aircraft, and you can either customize them, a rather involved looking process, or download community ones. Sadly, there's no support for any sim other than DCS, requiring SimApp Pro to operate. It's a fun addition giving extra feedback from your aircraft. I wouldn't call it a deal breaker, but it is unique to WinWing, helping immerse yourself and responding to the physical forces on your aircraft. Overall, both handles are fantastic. They're higher quality, heavier switches than previous WinWing's designs. The E is specialised with those 3-position switches matching the real aircraft, and the EX is hell for leather, more buttons. Being highly flexible, having more buttons than I know what to do with being offered. Many controllers suffer from having only one relative or absolute axes for your radar antenna knot, so this really does make the EX capable of handling any aircraft you can throw at it without compromise. Personally, I'd say I like the E handle more. It's less crowded, specialised, and a replica, and has that air brake switch, but then I do have the luxury of a wide range of throttles to pick from, and I'm rather fond of air brake switches. Set on an Orion base, you've got the better part of an entire cockpit at your side. Paired with older bases, I'd say it's still a good choice. As mentioned, you're going to lose some buttons, but you can still bind them one-to-one with the F-15E anyway. Given the awkwardness in pressing that hat button directionally, I can't see myself binding anything important on there anyway, making it easy to recommend them despite the minor flaws in design or ergonomics. Powerful, loaded with switches, and of course unique, being the only F-15 handle set on the market, if the price is right for you. It comes in various bundle options, and I feel the price is fair for the sheer functionality personally. As always, check the shipping and potential VAT or import duties, which will drag the prices up. You'll find store links in the description, and you can catch all my hardware reviews on my channel. I hope you've enjoyed, and take care.